Most of us know the feeling of a mind that refuses to shut down, the exhausting experience of lying awake while thoughts race in circles. For 24-year-old Marco, this was a constant state of being. His attention was always elsewhere, caught between the heavy regrets of his past and a sharp, persistent fear of what might happen tomorrow. This mental turbulence took a visible toll. He struggled to sleep, his energy vanished, and the simple ability to smile or feel calm had been replaced by a permanent sense of unease. When your own mind feels like a prison, finding a way to quiet the noise is no longer a luxury. It becomes a necessity for survival. When the internal noise becomes too loud, we often look for an external solution, assuming that peace can only be found by physically leaving our environment behind. Following this logic, Marco travels deep into the hills to find a retired psychologist. He believes that if anyone can teach him how to be still, it's a man who has traded the city for total mountain isolation. He finds the old man sitting on a porch enveloped in greenery. The setting is perfectly silent, exactly the kind of serene retreat Marco imagined he needed to fix his restless mind. The psychologist offers a sharp departure from the expected silence. He fills a glass to the absolute brim with water and gives Marco a specific, high-stakes task: walk through the busiest part of the village and back without spilling a single drop. Marco came seeking a quiet sanctuary to calm his nerves. Instead, he is forced into a challenge that demands intense coordination right in the middle of a crowd. Marco steps into the narrow street and is immediately surrounded by a wall of activity. Shopkeepers shout, dogs bark, and people rush past him. The glass is so full that even a slight flinch in response to the noise would mean failure. To keep the water steady, Marco has to lock his eyes on the surface of the glass. He forces himself to ignore everything else, focusing entirely on the balance of his own hands. This diagram illustrates a principle of attention. Our cognitive capacity is a limited container, usually filled with a chaotic mix of unfinished worries. When a task requires 100% of our attention, it displaces everything else. The immediate demand takes up all available space. This mechanic of focus effectively crowds out the cognitive space required for worry. By prioritizing the balance of the water, Marco's brain has no bandwidth left to generate anxiety. Marco eventually returns to the porch, having successfully navigated the noise without spilling a drop. He feels a strange sense of accomplishment. The old man smiles and asks a few simple questions. Did you notice the children playing? Did you hear the dogs barking on the street? Marco realizes with a start that he hadn't seen or heard any of it. He was so immersed in the task that the rest of the world had effectively vanished. The village didn't stop being loud. The dogs were still barking and the merchants were still shouting. But because Marco's attention was elsewhere, his mind was finally quiet. Silence becomes a byproduct of singular attention, persisting even when the environment remains loud. The psychologist explains that fear and confusion are parasites of the mind. They require our attention to survive, and they thrive only when we allow our thoughts to wander away from the present moment. This timeline shows the shift in Marco's focus. Initially, his mind was bouncing between a past he couldn't change and a future he couldn't predict. By locking onto the present, he finally found stability. As the sun sets, Marco begins his walk home, carrying a stillness that had escaped him for years. The mountain village is the same as it was, but he is no longer the same restless man. Peace is found by anchoring the mind to the immediate moment, making it independent of any physical destination. Our everyday lives are much like that village street, full of distractions, loud demands, and constant movement. We don't need to find a remote cabin or a silent room to clear our heads. The noise of the world isn't actually what prevents us from being calm. The secret is finding your own glass of water. Whether it's a deep breath, a physical movement, or a focused task, you need a grounding point that forces your mind to stay exactly where you are. True peace functions as a solid internal anchor, maintained even while standing in the center of a storm.